Top 5 old Hollywood actors Judy Garland hated most. Now we know the reason why. Judy Garland was born Frances Ethel Gumm on June 10, 1922, in Grand Rapids. Her parents, Frank and Ethel Gumm, managed a vaudeville theater and were performers themselves. Frances and her two older sisters were thrust into the spotlight from an incredibly young age, performing as the Gumm sisters on the vaudeville circuit when Frances was barely out of toddlerhood. This was not a childhood of playgrounds and school friends. It was a life of train travel, rehearsals, and performing in front of strangers night after night. Ethel Gumm, in particular, was a fiercely ambitious stage mother who pushed her daughters relentlessly, often to the detriment of their emotional well-being. She saw in young Frances a precocious talent, a powerful voice, and a natural stage presence, and she was determined to see her youngest daughter become a star, living out her own unrealized dreams through her children. This early immersion in the performance world, driven by a demanding and controlling maternal figure, meant that Frances, who would become Judy, never truly had a normal childhood. She learned to perform before she learned to be a child, a foundational experience that would shape her entire life and leave her perpetually searching for the stability and love she never fully received in those formative years. The seeds of insecurity and a deep-seated need for approval were sown incredibly early, long before the pressures of Hollywood truly began to take hold. The relentless ambition of Ethel Gumm eventually led them to California and, in 1935, at the tender age of 13, Frances Ethel Gumm, now known as Judy Garland, signed a contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer MGM, one of the most powerful and infamous film studios of Hollywood's golden age. This was the big time, but it was also entering a highly controlled and often dehumanizing environment. MGM, under the iron fist of studio head Louis B. Mayer, operated like a factory, churning out films and carefully managing their stars, treating them as commodities to be molded, packaged, and sold. For a young girl like Judy, already vulnerable from her vaudeville upbringing and her mother's constant pressure, MGM became a different kind of prison. Despite her undeniable vocal talent and natural acting ability, Judy didn't fit the standard MGM mold of glamorous beauty personified by stars like Lana Turner or Elizabeth Taylor. She was told she was plain, given unflattering costumes, and constantly put on strict diets to control her weight, often monitored and criticized by studio executives. This constant scrutiny and negative feedback deeply affected her already fragile self-esteem, instilling a lifelong insecurity about her appearance. Worse still, the studio, in their relentless drive for productivity and control, introduced Judy, still in her early teens, to a dangerous practice that would haunt her forever. To keep her energetic for demanding filming schedules and to control her appetite, she was given stimulant medications. To help her sleep after being wired from the stimulants, she was given sedatives. This introduction to a cycle of chemical crutches, administered and encouraged by the very people who were supposed to be looking after her, was a catastrophic decision, laying the foundation for her lifelong struggles with dependency and severely impacting her physical and mental health for decades to come. Her early career at MGM saw her starring in a popular series of musical comedies with fellow young star Mickey Rooney, showcasing her talent and building her popularity. But even this success came at the cost of her well-being under the demanding studio system. Despite the dark undercurrents of her early studio life, Judy Garland's immense talent could not be suppressed. In 1939, her life and career changed forever when she was cast as Dorothy Gale in the Technicolor fantasy musical The Wizard of Oz. It was a challenging production, but Judy's performance as the Kansas farm girl yearning for something more resonated deeply with audiences. Her rendition of Over the Rainbow became her signature song and one of the most iconic in cinematic history. The film was a massive success, transforming Judy Garland into a national icon, a symbol of innocence, hope, and the magic of movies. The Academy recognized her unique impact with a special juvenile award. Following The Wizard of Oz, Judy became one of MGM's most valuable stars, headlining a string of hugely successful musical films that are now considered classics. She starred in Strike Up the Band, Babes on Broadway, and Girl Crazy. She delivered unforgettable performances in films like Meet Me in St. Louis, The Harvey Girls, Easter Parade, and Summer Stock. Her voice was inimitable, her screen presence magnetic, and her ability to convey emotion, both through song and acting, was unparalleled. The public adored her, seeing the vibrant, talented, and seemingly happy star. But beneath the polished surface, the pressures, the constant work, the body image issues, and the escalating reliance on substances were taking a devastating toll. This period of immense success also brought her into contact with a wide array of collaborators, directors, choreographers, producers, and fellow actors. While some relationships were genuinely supportive and fruitful, others were fraught with tension, misunderstanding, competition, or outright cruelty. It was during these intensely stressful years that the seeds of resentment and negative feelings towards certain individuals were sown, relationships that would become a source of lasting pain. As the years at MGM wore on, Judy Garland's personal life became increasingly turbulent, inextricably linked to her declining health and escalating struggles with dependency. Her reliance on the pills initially given to her by the studio spiraled into a severe problem, leading to chronic insomnia, erratic weight fluctuations, crippling anxiety, and debilitating mood swings. The relentless schedule, combined with the effects of the substances she was using, made it increasingly difficult for her to function normally. She would be late for set, miss days of filming entirely, and experience emotional breakdowns. This behavior, a direct result of her underlying health issues, stemming from years of mistreatment by the studio system, earned her a reputation as being difficult or unreliable within the industry. Her personal relationships suffered alongside her health and career. She married 5 times, searching for the stability and love she craved. But each marriage ultimately crumbled under the weight of her internal struggles and external pressures. Her relationship with her mother remained complicated and often strained. She was constantly battling with studio executives, managers, and eventually, her own declining physical and mental state. The cycle of dependency, the public scrutiny, the failed relationships, and the crushing pressure to perform took a heavy toll. She was fired from MGM in 1950, a devastating blow. Though she experienced triumphant comebacks later in her career, the underlying issues never truly disappeared. She was a woman of extraordinary talent, fighting an exhausting, lifelong battle against profound insecurity, deep-seated trauma, and the physical grip of dependency. This struggle made her incredibly sensitive, vulnerable to perceived slights, and sometimes difficult to work with. Not out of malice, but out of pain and instability. It was precisely within this turbulent period, when Judy Garland's personal life and health were spiraling, that her interactions with some colleagues on film sets and beyond became intensely strained and bitter. Sometimes, her raw vulnerability and pain clashed violently with the indifference, impatience, competitive nature, or even cruelty of those around her. This volatile mix led to a list of individuals she would never forget, people who, according to numerous sources and her own later reflections, caused her significant distress, and towards whom Judy Garland harbored incredibly strong negative feelings. While hated might be a strong word, used here to reflect the dramatic framing of the title, it captures the depth of the resentment and hurt she felt. Let's explore the reasons behind these difficult relationships, counting down to the figure believed to have caused her the most profound pain among her professional peers. At number 5, Ray Bolger. Known and loved for his portrayal of the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, Ray Bolger was a gifted dancer and actor, a true professional with a long career. He was also one of Judy's co-stars in the film that made her a legend. Their relationship during the filming of Oz was reportedly warm and collaborative, part of the close bond the main cast shared while enduring the demanding production. However, their paths would cross again later in life, notably on television specials and potentially benefit concerts. during periods when Judy's health and reliability issues were at their peak. The reason for friction here isn't tied to cruelty or direct conflict in the traditional sense, but rather the painful strain that Judy's struggles placed on even her long-standing, ostensibly positive professional relationships. Bulger, a consummate professional, was used to punctuality and consistency. When Judy was late, missed cues, or was unable to perform due to her health issues, direct consequences of the system that created her fame, it caused frustration for those around her, including Bulger. While he likely held genuine affection for her, the professional strain was undeniable. For Judy, who was incredibly sensitive to disappointing people and acutely aware of the reputation she had gained, the knowledge that she was causing difficulty for a friend and respected colleague like Bulger would have been agonizing. She likely internalized his frustration, perceiving it perhaps as disappointment or criticism, adding another layer of guilt and potentially breeding a complex mix of resentment, not necessarily at him, but at the situation and at herself, which could manifest as negative feelings towards the person embodying that disappointment. It represented the painful reality that her illness was not just destroying her life, but also impacting those she cared about or respected professionally. It was the hate born of guilt and perceived judgment from someone she didn't want to disappoint. Moving to number 4, we encounter a figure who represented the very standard of beauty and glamour that the studio constantly used to undermine Judy's self-esteem, Lana Turner. A quintessential MGM star, Lana Turner possessed the kind of stunning, conventional Hollywood beauty that MGM executives constantly compared Judy unfavorably to. While Judy was singing and acting her heart out, she was simultaneously being told she wasn't pretty enough, didn't have the right figure, and needed constant fixing to meet the studio's glamorous ideal. Judy was acutely aware of these comparisons. She saw stars like Lana Turner gracing magazine covers, embodying the physical perfection that MGM celebrated and demanded. It wasn't necessarily that Lana Turner herself was cruel to Judy directly, but that she became a living symbol of the unattainable standard that caused Judy so much pain and insecurity. Every time the studio pressured her about her weight or looks, every time she felt inadequate about her appearance, the image of stars like Lana Turner who fit the mold effortlessly would loom large. The hate here is arguably directed less at Lana Turner the person, and more at what she represented within the oppressive studio system. The standard that constantly reminded Judy that, in the eyes of the powerful men who controlled her career, she was fundamentally less than because she didn't possess that specific type of glamour. It was the hate born of deep insecurity, fueled by cruel comparisons, and directed at the symbol of her perceived flaws. At number 3, we address a relationship that brought clashing personalities and personal struggles onto the set, creating significant tension. Robert Walker. Robert Walker was a talented actor, known for films like See Here, Private Hargrove, and Strangers on a Train. He co-starred with Judy Garland in the 1946 musical biography Till the Clouds Roll By, a difficult production where Judy portrayed stage performer Marilyn Miller. This film was made during a period of intense personal difficulty for both actors. Judy was deep in her struggles with dependency and the pressures of MGM, often physically and emotionally unwell. Robert Walker was also grappling with significant personal and psychological issues, including the fallout from his recent, high-profile divorce from Jennifer Jones. According to accounts from the set, the production was chaotic, partly due to Judy's unreliable attendance and emotional state, but also due to Walker's own problems. Their individual fragilities reportedly clashed, creating a tense and difficult working environment. Instead of finding mutual support in their shared struggles, their vulnerabilities exacerbated each other's difficulties. There wasn't a single dramatic incident widely reported, but rather a pervasive atmosphere of tension and difficulty stemming from their clashing personal issues on a challenging production. For Judy, who needed understanding and patience during this time, working with someone else who was also struggling and potentially adding to the on-set stress would have been incredibly draining and frustrating. The hate towards Walker likely stemmed from the pain of this difficult collaboration, the feeling that his own issues made her already precarious situation worse, and the lack of a supportive dynamic when she desperately needed one. It was the hate born of clashing pain and the burden of navigating another's difficulties while drowning in her own. Ascending to number 2. We revisit a crucial professional partnership that was a source of both creative brilliance and profound personal pain. Gene Kelly, a legendary dancer, choreographer, director, and actor. Gene Kelly was a force of nature on set, a demanding perfectionist who strived for excellence, particularly in his intricate musical numbers. Judy Garland starred with him in several films, including For Me and My Gal, The Pirate, and Summer Stock. Creatively, their collaboration often yielded spectacular results, showcasing Judy's surprisingly agile movement alongside her vocal prowess. However, behind the scenes, their working relationship was frequently strained, particularly on The Pirate 1948 and Summer Stock 1950, two productions where Judy's health issues were significantly impacting her ability to work consistently. Gene Kelly, driven by his perfectionism and dedication to complex choreography and staging, found Judy's unreliability incredibly frustrating. Her lateness, absences, and difficulty concentrating due to her health issues directly impacted the rigorous production schedules and the successful execution of his demanding dance numbers. Accounts from the sets describe palpable tension. While Kelly wasn't overtly cruel in the manner of some others, his frustration and impatience were evident. For Judy, who was already consumed by guilt and insecurity over her inability to function normally, Kelly's visible annoyance and demands for professionalism she was struggling to meet would have been deeply hurtful and stressful. She was caught in a vicious cycle. The pressure and her health issues made her unreliable, which caused frustration to demanding colleagues like Kelly, which in turn increased her stress and exacerbated her health issues. The hate towards Kelly likely wasn't a simple dislike, but a profound resentment stemming from the constant stress he represented on set. The painful clash between his professional demands and her personal breakdown, and the feeling of inadequacy his perfectionism amplified when she was at her weakest. It was the hate born of relentless pressure and the inability to meet the standards of a demanding collaborator while battling for her very well-being. And now, at number 1, the figure believed to have caused Judy Garland some of the deepest and most foundational pain early in her career. A relationship marked by documented cruelty and psychological damage. Busby Berkeley. While primarily known as a director and choreographer of elaborate musical numbers, Berkeley worked closely with Judy Garland on some of her earliest musical films at MGM, including Strike Up the Band 1940 and Babes on Broadway 1941, often directing the musical sequences or the entire film. Berkeley was renowned for his spectacular, often geometrically complex musical numbers, but he was also known for his demanding, tyrannical, and often emotionally abusive behavior on set, particularly towards his performers. Judy Garland was a young teenager when she worked extensively with Berkeley. She was already dealing with the pressures of MGM, the body image issues, and the beginning of her dependency on prescribed substances. According to numerous biographies and interviews with those who witnessed it, Berkeley was relentlessly cruel to Judy. He reportedly belittled her, called her ugly, made fun of her appearance, and subjected her to intense emotional abuse on set, often in front of cast and crew. He pushed her to the point of exhaustion and tears. This was not just tough directing. It was psychological torment directed at a vulnerable adolescent already struggling with insecurity and physical demands. This early, traumatic experience with Berkeley contributed significantly to Judy's anxiety, her feelings of inadequacy, and likely reinforced her reliance on the substances that offered a temporary escape from the emotional pain and physical exhaustion. His cruelty left deep scars, becoming a symbol of the ruthless exploitation and emotional abuse she endured within the studio system. The hate towards Busby Berkeley was born of early trauma, profound humiliation, and the lasting damage inflicted by a powerful figure who used his position to systematically break down a young, sensitive performer instead of nurturing her. It was the hate born of a wounded inner child and the enduring pain of being cruelly mistreated at a critical, formative stage of her life and career. Judy Garland's life after leaving MGM in 1950 was a roller coaster of dazzling highs and devastating lows. She achieved monumental success on the concert stage, proving she was a survivor with a voice and stage presence that could electrify audiences like no one else. Her legendary performance at Carnegie Hall in 1961 is considered one of the greatest nights in show business history. She made a triumphant return to dramatic film with A Star is Born 1954, earning an Academy Award nomination and reminding the world of her incredible acting talent. She also had her own television show in the 1960s, showcasing her versatility as a performer. However, the underlying issues never went away. Her struggles with dependency on substances and her volatile emotional health continued to plague her. Her finances were often in disarray. Her personal relationships remained unstable, and she battled periods of severe depression and physical illness. Despite the love of her children and the adoration of her devoted fans, she often felt isolated and deeply unhappy. The pressures of her early life and career had inflicted wounds that never truly healed. Judy Garland passed away tragically and prematurely on June 22, 1969, in London, just 12 days after her 47th birthday. The official cause was stated as an accidental overdose of barbiturates, a stark and heartbreaking culmination of her lifelong struggles with the substances she had been introduced to and encouraged to use by the studio system decades earlier. Her untimely death sent shockwaves around the world, a mournful recognition of a supernova talent extinguished too soon, a victim of the very system that had created her fame. Judy Garland's legacy as a performer is untouchable. Her voice, her emotional honesty, and her sheer star power continue to captivate new generations. But her story is also a poignant and cautionary tale about the price of fame and the human cost of a ruthless industry. The figures she reportedly hated, individuals like Busby Berkeley, Gene Kelly, Lana Turner, Robert Walker, and even the strain on relationships like the one with Ray Bolger, represent more than just personal dislikes. They embody the various facets of the crushing pressure, the casual cruelty, the impossible standards, the frustrating conflicts, and the sheer lack of empathy that Judy Garland faced throughout her career, particularly during her most vulnerable periods. Her struggles with these individuals were not isolated incidents, but symptoms of the deeper systemic issues that plagued old Hollywood. The control, the exploitation, the dehumanization of its stars, all of which contributed to Judy's spiral. Her list of hated colleagues serves as a stark reminder that behind the shimmering facade of Hollywood glamour lay a reality of complex human beings enduring immense pressure, often inflicting pain upon each other, intentionally or unintentionally, within a system that prioritized profit and image over well-being. Judy Garland's life was a masterpiece performance marred by profound suffering, and the reasons she harbored such strong negative feelings towards certain figures are deeply rooted in the tragic price she paid for her extraordinary talent. Her story is a permanent testament to the human cost behind the magic of the movies.